This week on Influence, it's time to enter the Skibidiverse. Hey there, hi there, ho there. Welcome back to the Influence Podcast with me, the host of the show, Matt Silverman. That is a reference to the Mickey Mouse Club for any of you Gen Zers or Gen Alpha-ers. The Mickey Mouse Club was a popular children's program. I don't even know what network it was on before the Disney channels of the world appeared on cable television. It's a thing that even predates me as a geriatric person. Why did I say that? I don't know. It just felt right. If you have any nostalgia for the Mickey Mouse Club, I don't know. Tell me about the favorite kids that you liked from them that went on to become troubled and or drug addicted child actors or pop stars. I don't know. That's not what this podcast is about, but I thought I would welcome you with that ridiculous phrase. This show is a program. If you're new to it, it's about internet creativity, online platforms, the people that make the YouTube videos, the podcasts, the newsletters, the TikToks, the recipes, the how-to, whatever you're into, the video game reviews, the tabletop role-playing game reviews or improv show, whatever you subscribe to, whatever you love on this old information superhighway, we talk to those people who make the stuff. And as an elderly person who remains fascinated by all of this culture and who simply cannot be plugged into all of it all the time, I love learning about it. I love getting suggestions from guests, listeners, internet travels that I do. I'm like, hey, what's this? And then we bring them on the show and we talk about fascinating things that I knew nothing about. That's what the show is all about. And I'm glad you're with me. I'm glad you've been listening for some time, or perhaps you're watching on the YouTube channel, which is fairly new, but starting to pick up steam. Thank you to everyone who is smashing the likes and the subscribes buttons. I have some pretty fantastic guests coming up. I won't fully spoil, but I will say in the coming weeks, I will be covering, sorry to be a downer, death and grief communities. It's important. Coping with grief and loss is something that we're not good at. Humans are bad at it. Especially in Western cultures, the US, perhaps Europe, I'm going to say we kind of suck at those sorts of topics. It's very difficult because we don't prepare ourselves. We don't talk to kids about it. We don't think about it as part of a life cycle. We think about it as a thing to be feared, which it is, but also it's something that you gotta figure out. And there are influencers and YouTubers and podcasters and death doulas, which was only a concept I recently became familiar with. And so I will be talking to content creators and a death doula who focuses on those topics via I think mostly Instagram, but perhaps other platforms. We'll talk about that. So that's going to come up, or I'm going to record that very shortly. If you have questions or interest in that topic, maybe you have a personal story about loss in your life or your family that perhaps is something you're still wrestling with, maybe a question for a death doula, a person who coaches people or prepares people or I don't know if they would agree with this, but like almost like a therapist in the preparation for a loss of life, perhaps your own or a loved one. My God, are perhaps the hardest, most complicated topic we could ever address. But if that is of interest to you, or you have a personal story to share, or a question for my upcoming guests, there will be 2 of them, as a matter of fact. Let me know. Get at me in the Discord. Email the show, influencepod69 at gmail.com. Or hop over to the Patreon and leave a comment or send me a direct message. I don't think you need to be subscribed at any monetary level. You can just send a message. I will see it. I will ask those questions. Also, one of my favorite types of podcast that I do not participate in. I do, whenever I see something on the internet, I have to slap my own hand and say, you're not good. You can't do that. You're not going to be good at that. You can't make that. Just enjoy it. Don't take part in it. Just consume it and have fun. And one of those categories that I love dearly is improv comedy podcasts. They're one of my favorite types of shows. I subscribe to and listen to an absurd number of them. And one of them is called Hello from the Magic Tavern. It is an improv comedy podcast that I've listened to for many years. I think they've been doing their thing for 10 years, maybe longer. It is a fully improvised show set in a fantasy world where a human from Earth has fallen through a portal and then is kind of creating a travelogue with a shapeshifter who's usually in the form of a talking badger and a wizard who fights evil. But he's sort of like a bumbling Gandalf. If Gandalf was a clueless idiot, that would be the wizard character. And so they are constantly improvising and making fun of tropes from Dungeons and Dragons and Tolkien and Harry Potter, any fantasy trope you could imagine. They interview gnomes and dragons and bounty hunters and sheriffs and, guards at the castle, whatever. They bring people in from the improv community, often very famous improvisers that you know and love from television and film. And they've become a huge thing, and I will hopefully have the wonderful pleasure of interviewing one or all of those fantastic folks. I'm a huge fan of theirs, so if you're a fan of improv comedy podcasts and or Magic Tavern specifically, I highly recommend the show if you like that sort of stuff, and if you're a fan of theirs and have questions for any of those performers. Again, get at me in the Discord or email or Patreon, and we can certainly ask those questions for my future guests. Also, one more YouTuber who I believe her channel is called Girl with the Dogs. Girl with the Dogs, I believe. She runs a dog grooming business. I was going to say clinic, but that's not what you call it. And she gives baths and haircuts to dogs for free in exchange for if the owners will let her make YouTube videos about the dogs. And it is the funniest, silliest, cutest stuff. I'm not an animal person. We don't have pets around here, but the kids and my wife certainly love a good dog video from time to time, and she is lovely and has agreed to do a chat about how this all got started. This brilliant idea of like blow drying a dog's hair and then kind of riffing on that and the hilarity that ensues when you groom a dog, especially one who is not yours, and all that good stuff. So I will be watching a lot of her dog videos and asking lots of questions about how she has now turned this into a huge channel, a huge business. So if you have questions for Girl with the Dogs, again, get at me on all those channels. This week, there was some fascinating news popping off that in the internet culture creator economy space that I felt compelled to talk about. It's also a great way for me to say, hey, look, it's just me. It's just me. So reaching out to many, many people and trying to book someone on the show, collaborating with them on like, hey, what's the best schedule? When are you available? Hey, what time zone are you in? Blah, blah, blah. watching, reading, listening to all their stuff to be fully prepared for the interview. Working out that whole run of show, doing the interview. Cool. That's honestly kind of like the easiest part. Then because I'm making a video version for every week, I really don't do a lot of editing, but putting all the video and audio on the timeline, graphics, whatever, cutting up the social assets, writing descriptions, publishing, blah blah blah. What I'm trying to say is this show's a lot of work, and any week that I can kind of do a simpler version and just hang out with you, the loyal listeners, and shoot the shit about interesting stuff that's going on in the YouTube podcast social media space. I'm not really interested in like YouTuber drama unless it bubbles over into a meaningful discussion about what is happening around the culture of this show and its topics. But there were a couple things that I felt very interested in, very passionate about, and I thought I would share them with you and start a conversation, get your take, and hopefully perhaps spread some knowledge about what's poppin'. As my daughter would say, what's poppin'? That's what all of her friends at elementary and now almost middle school say. They say, "What's up, brother?" which is "What's up, brother?" which comes from a Twitch streamer and then blew up on TikTok. So I'm fascinated by the fact that she and all of her friends, like toward the end of the 2024 school year, started saying, "What's up, brother?" And none of them knew where it came from. They just knew that it came from the internet / TikTok, even though it actually originated from a Twitch streamer. And a colleague of mine / friend of mine who I've worked with on many video and audio projects, her name is Tally. She made a video explainer about where this came from because I had no idea. And she's like, "Oh yeah, this is where this came from, and here's the history of it." I was like, "This is so great. This is fascinating." And then I asked the kids, like, "Do you know what What's Up, Brother is?" They're like, "I don't know, just everyone says it." And I was like, okay, fascinating. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But the big news from this past week is that Skibidi Toilet, the web series, the meme, the animation powerhouse, is going to be, I don't know, a feature-length movie, a television show, a Skibidiverse of professional content, let's call it. I don't know. Hollywood content. Produced or touched in some way by the man, the myth, the legend, the king of Hollywood explosions and robots and what have you, Michael Bay, is somehow going to be turning Skibidi Toilet into a movie franchise. And when this broke, I had to educate myself about the dimensions, the Skibidi dimensions of what is going on. If you're listening to this show, maybe you're aware of it, or maybe you are an elderly person like me and you are conscious of it, but you're not fully plugged into it. And I had to get my head around the scope of what this was, because I guess I assumed that it was sort of like a meme, a flash in the pan, a cultural moment that was crazy popular and spread through the sort of TikTok, YouTube ecosystem, but had no narrative bones. You know what I mean? So the idea of a Michael Bay or a Hollywood machinery saying, "Well, hey, this GIF is popular. Let's license it for a movie franchise." I was like, wow, that's crazy. I am here to tell you that I am mistaken in that assumption, because as I figured out through research, and you may laugh at me because you may already know this, but it is a web series made in the Source filmmaker, which I find very compelling. The Source Filmmaker is it is a suite of tools released by Valve, the video game company, and video game distribution platform. They make Steam, of course, and many of their games, Team Fortress 2, Portal, Half-Life, other games that they have made, are typically made in the Source engine, which is a game engine that lets game developers put buildings and characters and explosions and triggers for events and stuff like that to make a video game. But they also released, I assume, a free open source version of that software so that machinima creators, people who make movies out of video game assets, can go nuts with the sort of models and characters and textures and import your own crazy shit into this engine and make movies for YouTube, that some of which become quite popular. So Skibidi Toilet is a web series, multiple videos, tens, if not hundreds of videos in a series that are made in Source Filmmaker. And it only came out last summer. The summer of 2023. It is a channel called Da Fuck Boom, DAFUK Boom, and it is created by Alexei. I don't know if I'm going to say this right. Gerasimov. Yeah, he is a person who lives in Georgia, the country, not the U.S. state. And this is a web series about, let's call it an absurdist / surrealist. Surrealist is probably a good way to talk about this. This is the ongoing saga of a war between an army of toilets with human heads popping out of the bowl of the toilet, as you do, versus an army of humans with weird technological heads like camera heads. And they are at war for some reason, and they are fighting and killing each other, and explosions are happening, and weird, creepy, absurdist, surrealist, bizarre things are happening. And this series, across all its platforms, this is according to Tube Filter, which has covered this in depth as the meme and the series has exploded over the last year. I'm assuming this is YouTube, so the original channel plus related shorts plus little clips and rips that come on to TikTok and Instagram, maybe Facebook. Wherever Skibidi Toilet appears and mutates into other things, it is estimated that Skibidi Toilet content has been viewed 65 billion with a B. 65 billion times. There are only 8 billion people on planet Earth. Many of them, perhaps at least 500 million, if not 1 billion or so, they just I don't know, work in fields somewhere and probably don't really use the internet, I'm going to assume. So, 7-ish to 8-ish billion people who even have access to internet content, and Skibidi Toilet has been viewed 65 billion with a B times. So again, if this was just a moment in time, just an image or a concept, a flash in the pan, and then Hollywood tries to swoop in and turn it into a film franchise, I would be like, what? How? But no, this is a narrative series that has captured the I'm not even going to say zeitgeist. It has captured the soul, the imagination of what Know Your Meme, who tracks this stuff very closely, of course, is calling the soul of Generation Alpha. So it's not. I mean, I'm sure many Gen Zers are plugged into Skibidi Toilet, but it's the kids who are my kids' age, who are just watching this random shit, but then also subscribing and following and staying very connected to what's going to happen on episode 45 of Skibidi Toilet. here we are. So before we continue, I thought I'd do some primary source journalism and go right to the well of who is watching Skibidi Toilet. What do they know about it? The Generation Alphas themselves, my children. Last night, I sat them down and I said, "What do you know about Skibidi Toilet?" Here's what they had to say. Hello, what are your names?
Arthur.
Great. And what's your name?
Amelia.
I'm going to say 2 words to you, and you're going to tell me everything you know. Skibidi Toilet. Go.
It's a big meme, but a lot of people, but in my group, a lot of people don't use it, and it's and it's a meme. Dear Lord. It's a big meme.
It's a big meme. What's a meme?
A meme is like something that's like it can spread.
Don't corrupt this child.
Oh my gosh. You're very smart. Amelia, what is Skibidi Toilet?
It's basically...
Have you ever watched it?
No.
Oh.
I've heard of it.
Okay, so what do you know?
It's basically like this meme about like toilets, and then it's like everyone just says like you can compliment someone by saying that's so skibidi. Like you could say like that is so skibidi. So Skibidi Toilet Riz.
So Skibidi
It
Toilet
can be a
Riz.
compliment. When I was at theater camp, we were doing like pretend you're like celebrity, and then it was like I invented Skibidi Toilet, and that was like this.
Got it. So the kids at your camp think that the most famous person, the height of celebrity, is the inventor of Skibidi Toilet.
No, it's just like that could be a celebrity.
Got it.
Or who knows who made it, but it's like a meme.
Okay.
It's like...
Have you ever watched Skibidi Toilet, Arthur?
Nope.
Got it. Okay. I'm going to tell you 2 facts. 1, Skibidi Toilet is a web series, an animation.
Yeah, it's like a bunch of videos.
And it has been watched 65 billion times.
Oh, dear Lord.
And it's about, they're going to turn it into a movie.
They are?
With, produced by Michael Bay.
Why?
Why do you think? What's your...
Corrupt children's minds. He's like...
Arthur
How
fainted.
old are you, 6? 7?
Who? What?
How old is this?
This guy? How old are you?
I'm at 8.
Oh, yeah.
I should have asked.
He's still being corrupted.
How old are you?
11.
Okay, any final thoughts on Skibidi Toilet?
It's a very sus meme.
And what are your final thoughts?
It's brain rot.
So a bit of context here. My children do not have unfettered access to YouTube. They do not have like their own YouTube viewing accounts. So there is just there are 2 iPads in the house where they are allowed, with permission, to open up YouTube and watch designated channels, mostly Mr. Beast, because that content is mostly family friendly and appropriate for them, even though they push the line on that sort of stuff here and there. But science channels and education channels and the Mr. Beasts and the Mark Robers of the world, they watch and enjoy that, and it is sort of their to an extent sort of their wind down junk food TV time. And it is watched with permission and supervision. They do not consume content with algorithms or autoplay or suggested videos on. We make a very strong point about that. So the point of telling you that is that my children are probably not the best representative sample of the Skibidi Toilet generation. However, as you heard or perhaps saw if you're watching the video version of this, even though they have never watched a single Skibidi Toilet piece of content, they've probably never even seen it with their own eyes, everyone in their orbit, all of their social connections, everyone at school and camp very much knows the term Skibidi, says it in conversation, uses it as a compliment. And my son, who is 8 years old, is like, oh yeah, that's a meme. My son knows what a meme is. Okay. So this has Michael Bay, he's on to something. So this came about from this is a company where called Invisible Narratives, which partnered with a toy company, a manufacturing company called Bonkers Toys, to create merchandise for Skibidi Toilet, which is a no-brainer. You're gonna print money by selling whatever action figures of Skibidi Toilet. But Michael Bay is apparently the chief creative advisor for this company, Invisible Narratives. So now Michael Bay is planning to make a movie and or TV franchise, quote, similar to the Marvel Universe or Transformers. So not just a movie, not just a Skibidi Toilet movie, but some sort of, again, I was joking about it, but like, can we make the Skibidiverse happen? This is the timeline we're living in. This is a quote from Adam Goodman, the CEO of Invisible Narratives. This is via Tube Filter, but I think he was quoted in maybe the Washington Post. Yes, quote, "This is as real as any franchise that we've ever been involved with. It's still storytelling. It's still character development. It's still jokes and action and drama and intrigue. It's just a different delivery mechanism," end quote. He's right. Again, I misinterpreted what this actually was, and there is a, albeit ridiculous, insane narrative happening over many tens to hundreds of episodes of Skibidi Toilet. More to come, obviously. He says, "I think YouTube is one of the greatest breeding grounds of new IP." He tells the Washington Post. He is correct. It's a business as significant financially as everything we've seen in the traditional entertainment business. It's just a little different. Adam Goodman, I'm not familiar with him, but the CEO of Invisible Narratives, which sounds like a development and or licensing house for IP, but also was the former president of Paramount Pictures. So, Michael Bay, the president of Paramount, and all the other machinery and operations that revolve around these types of people are going to cash in on Skibidi Toilet. And I do think that is a watershed moment for this type of thing. And, it is adjacent to, but different than, Mr. Beast getting a $100 million Amazon deal to make the biggest game show ever made for Amazon Prime streaming. That was also a big watershed moment. But Mr. Beast is a brand, and every video that he and his crew make are contained within each video. And so he makes, crazy survival, whatever game shows. And now that they are amping that up to a 100 with $100 million budget on a streaming service. That's unbelievable. That's cool. But the Skibidi Toilet thing is like, no, we're going to make a narrative feature-length film about an army of toilets with heads popping out of them. Like, okay, like, this is a moment. It's a moment. Let me know what you think about this. Were you aware of what this was? 65 billion views. Truly, as a person who considers themselves somewhat plugged in to the culture, I was floored by what we're looking at here. The next story that I was fascinated to see is that the U.S. Senate is considering 2 online safety bills when it comes to children, minors, people under the age of 18. One is called KOSA, KOSA, which is the Kids Online Safety Act. This was introduced into Congress in 2022. And also COPPA 2.0, COPPA 2.0. Bear with me because the acronym doesn't quite line up, but I'll explain why. Children and Teens Online Privacy Protection Act. This was introduced in 2023, and I guess these are finally coming to the Senate floor soon. And both of these bills appear to have bipartisan support. So for context, COPPA, COPPA, was a bill that was enacted in 1998. I'm here to tell you that the internet, the web, in 1998 it was a little bit different. It was slightly different than it is in 2024. Slightly. It's a 1998 law which limits the data that digital platforms can collect about users who are under the age of 13. So basically, if you are under the age of 13, websites are not allowed to collect certain types of personally identifying information about you, and they're not allowed to use that data to advertise to you. It is a privacy protection. And how that extrapolates to modern social media is like, if you can't harvest data about a user, you cannot therefore you cannot accurately target them with personalized advertising, which is the lifeblood of every social media company: YouTube, Facebook, Meta, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. Their entire business model is spying on you, tracking you across every device, platform, website, browser they can get access to, and then collecting that data and then targeting you with the most specific advertising possible to make their platform as valuable to advertisers as they possibly can. I'm this, but I'm reiterating the context because you are not allowed to do that to children under the age of 13 because of this 1998 law called COPPA. How we determine which users and devices and IP addresses are children under the age of 13 and which are not, I assume, is a goddamn shit show. It is up to the user and the parents to say, hello, I'm creating a YouTube account and I'm ticking the box that says I am under 13. And then it is on Google, YouTube, Alphabet's, whatever parent company you want to delineate here, to say, oh, okay, for this user, we will not be serving targeted advertisement and we will not be collecting data. As I just explained, my kids just open up an iPad and then they watch Mr. Beast videos. And so YouTube does not know the age of the person looking at the screen. And so they get all sorts of ads, of course. And also, if algorithms or suggested videos were on, they would go into a rabbit hole of algorithmic content. So it's up to the parents to moderate that, I suppose. Here's where COSA and COPPA 2.0 will perhaps change that and update that. COSA, if passed, would force platforms to limit features for minors, such as personalized algorithmic recommendations and video autoplay. So point there is, this law would make sure that if a platform identified a user under the age of 13, it wouldn't be up to the parents or the user to turn off the algorithms and the autoplay. It would then do that by law by default. So that's good. But it still doesn't quite solve the, how do we know if you're under 13? COPPA 2.0, in conjunction with that, would prohibit the collection of personal data without minors' consent and ban targeted advertising to users between the ages of 13 and 17. So that means so COPPA plus COPPA 2.0 plus COSA means any minor under the age of 18 in the United States would need to give consent to be targeted or get algorithmic suggestions or autoplay, meaning all this shit is shut off by default if the user is identified as a minor. That is major, because what we have seen, the 1998 bill was like kids who are under 13. But now we know that teenagers who use social media are undergoing an unprecedented mental health crisis, because we've always known that adolescent and teenage brains are not fully formed biologically. And we also know that consuming vast amounts of sort of like contextless information, meaning like shit from an algorithm that is not rooted in like, I understand why I'm seeing this video. I understand why this content may or may not be true. I understand why this content may or may not be disturbing or misleading or make me feel anxious, depressed, make me feel FOMO because I'm not doing the same things that attractive, successful influencers or my own friends are doing. And seeing all that shit all day long in a news feed, in an algorithmic feed that where you have no control over that, it fucks up adults. We're all fucked up from this shit. But kids in particular, teenagers in particular, who are at the most vulnerable and insecure time in their lives, are painfully susceptible to this. On this very feed, in the former iteration of the show, Two Girls, One Podcast, many of you who are listening to this now are longtime listeners of that show. We interviewed a young woman, her mother, and the lawyer who represents them. I believe the firm it's a nonprofit firm that is called the Social Media Victims Law Center. I believe I'm getting that right. This young woman, when she was a teenager, did a very normal and interesting thing. A very normal and innocent. I said interesting. I don't know why. A very normal and innocent thing, which was she searched on Instagram for like, hey, I want to lose 5 pounds, which, is a thing that all kids and adults, but especially teenage girls and young women with, who are feeling insecure about their body, they're like, hey, I want to find out how I can do this, right? And within an hour, she was being algorithmically served pro-anorexia content from anorexia influencers teaching her how to become anorexic and how to hide it from her parents. And the short version of that story is from one search about, hey, I want to lose a few pounds, to an hour later, to a year later, this young woman became hospitalized and I believe suicidal, because she became anorexic and mentally ill, and her parents did not know this was happening because she was hiding it from them. And long story short, she's fine. She's great. She recovered from that and was, and maybe still is, suing Meta because they know that the platform is doing this. They are not moderating this type of harmful content out well enough or fast enough. Last week's episode, we talked about content moderation and how professional content moderators are struggling to get this shit off the platform. They are bringing lawsuits against these companies because documents have shown that these platforms know the shit is there, and they did not do enough, and in some cases did nothing to get the content off. And so I don't know if it was a class action lawsuit or specific lawsuits. School districts are suing these platforms. Individuals are suing the platforms. Like towns and like counties, are bringing lawsuits. We covered that on the show as well. And I'll never forget, and I talk about it with friends and fellow parents as well. The lawyer we spoke to came from a product liability background. He previously had sued asbestos companies for continuing to sell cancer-causing products to consumers, despite the company and the public knowing that asbestos causes cancer when you use it in your home. So like tobacco, it was like, hey, we know our product is making people sick and killing them, but we're going to keep selling it anyway because we're making so much money. And if people sue us or people die, you know what? It's worth the cost. We'll still make the profit. And this lawyer would sue these asbestos companies and bring lawsuits and crush them, or at least get restitution for victims because they willfully sold dangerous products. And that is the premise upon which they are bringing lawsuits against social media companies. In particular, they were suing Meta. So the point is, we need regulation around this. We need ways to hold platforms accountable. We need ways to say, hey, kids should use the internet. Kids should be allowed to consume the internet. Kids should be allowed to connect with their friends. Kids should be allowed to subscribe to positive role models and educational content. Kids should be able to watch fucking Skibidi Toilet and get a good laugh from dumb shit on the internet. That's what the internet is for. The best content ever created in all of human history is on the internet, on YouTube and other platforms. Right this minute, I curate amazing channels for my kids to watch, and they love it. But when the platforms suggest the next video and the next video, and they look at your search history and they're like, this person, might be, they were looking for body stuff. This person might be interested in harming themselves. This person might be kind of, racist or authoritarian. Maybe they're going to like this crazy shit on this chat. Like, that shit is ruining civil discourse and social trust and democratic institutions for adults, but it is shredding the mental well-being of children everywhere. And, I can't believe I'm saying this, but good job, Congress, for stepping up and introducing legislation that will pull the sort of data collection, advertising, algorithmic poison out of these internet platforms that are otherwise positive and good for humanity. So we'll see. I didn't jot down exactly when these votes are taking place, and like with all the craziness of the elections and all that shit, will that come to pass this year or next year? I don't know. But I was heartened to hear about COSA and COPPA 2.0. While we're waiting for that sort of legislation, truly, the only advice I can give as a parent is like, just take the time to turn off autoplay. Just take the time. My daughter, who was 11, as you heard and saw when we were talking about Skibidi toilets, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, she came home from camps and school time, and she was like, I'm the only kid without a phone, and all these other kids are texting each other and looking at social media. They're looking at TikTok, and then they're like talking about TikTok, and I can't be in the conversation because I don't have these things. And, she came home very upset, crying. And I had to sit down with her truly and have like a heart-to-heart one-on-one conversation and say, look, I don't know how cars work. I don't know how to cook, anything besides these three things. I'm not an expert in anything except this. And I'm here to tell you how these platforms work, how these platforms exploit people, adults and children, to make their money. and it doesn't seem bad because you're just looking at fun stuff, and it's fun stuff. It's really good. But here's how it works under the hood and why it's so bad for kids. And so we will allow you to have an iPhone, or excuse me, we will allow you to have iPads. We will allow you to get an Apple Watch and make a list of trusted friends and family that you can text with whenever you want. But right now, when you're 10 or 11, you cannot use Instagram. You cannot use TikTok because it's just not okay. Look, if this kind of legislation passes and then it forces the platforms to say, hey, this user is designated she or he is 15, and then that user experience is now is by law different from the algorithmic experience that an adult would get from Instagram. And then my daughter would become friends with 20 of her buddies from school and then scroll the feed chronologically that shows, here's what this friend did. Here's what, there's a cute photo. I'm liking this friend. I'm liking that friend's photo, this video. Ha ha ha. We made a reel. We collabed. That would be awesome. That would be a fun, social, engaged experience for teenagers who want to connect with their friends and be seen and be social without algorithms suggesting harmful disinformation, garbage content to them in between Snapchats of their friends. That would be a way to save these platforms and make them safe for teenagers. Your mileage may vary. You must still maintain your role as a parent, because you have to say, hey, we allow our kids to do certain things because we have built a trust and built a path of honest communication with them to say, we are letting you do this and watch this with the understanding that you are not allowed to just click on anything you see on YouTube. That is not allowed. Do you understand? Okay, great. You can watch this dumb Mr. Beast video. That's the contract we make with our kids. And I hope more parents can find a way to do that. It's fucking hard. Being a parent is fucking hard as hell. And sometimes you just want to throw an iPad in a kid's face and say, I'm done with you. I don't care what you watch. But we also need this legislation so that we can to take the burden off of parents and actually make fucking laws and rules that protect children from internet content. That's my take. That's my rant. We're going to take a little break here, but I have 2 more stories. At least 2 more. Yeah. You're not going to want to miss them. Stand by for 2 more things that you're going to want to hear about right after this. It's that time again. You know it. You love it. It's time to thank all of the Patreon members, subscribers, who maybe they subscribe at the free level, where you just get updates about the show in your inbox. You get new episodes, questions for guests, all those guests that I shared at the top of this episode. Maybe I'll put it in the Patreon and say, hey, guess what? If you have questions, get them on in here. But also the folks that support at any tier, maybe they throw $1 in, maybe they throw $5 in. Maybe they're getting ad-free episodes. Maybe they're in the Patreon chat. I love you. I thank you. Thanks for being with me and with all iterations of the show throughout the years. We really appreciate it because, as many creators on this program have told you, making a living on the internet is very hard. Advertising sucks. I am only one person. It takes a lot of work to put a show together, even though it's just sort of a chill conversation. There is a lot of pre and post production that goes into every episode because here's the thing. I don't want these episodes to suck or be like meh. I really want them to be useful, interesting, entertaining for you. And so to that end, I would like to thank the patrons at the $10 or more tier, executive producers of the Influence Podcast who support the show at that level. They get their name read every single week, no matter what. Their names are Ken M., Bowie Barks, Dominic Kerr, Jerry Duran, Duran, and of course William. No last name required. If you would like to sign up for any tier or even the free tier to subscribe to What's Poppin', head on over to influencepod.com/Patreon? No. Here's a secret. I don't even have a website for the show. It's just the Patreon link and the Apple Podcast link and the YouTube. Like, where we're going, we don't need websites.com. We only need patreon.com/influencepod. That is where you can get video versions of the show, ad-free episodes of the show, access to the Patreon-only chat, and, maybe we're going to do some bonus content along the way. Get on in there. Speaking of children on the internet, what about dem grown-ups on the internet, huh? Huh? Well, in these United States of America, did you know that 50% of U.S. adults want to be an influencer? Huh? 50% of every grown-up in America wishes they could be on this very podcast. There's a lot to break down here. Okay. There is an influencer marketing agency called IZEA. IZEA. I've never heard of them. This comes by way of Tube Filter, which is a reputable source which reports on the creator economy. So, this is one study from one agency. However, I do find it interesting, and I do find that it feels like it tracks, and I'll explain why. This survey from IZEA says that 26% of U.S. adults between the ages of 18 and 60, that's a wide swath, but we're going to break it down, currently identify as content creators. So 26%, or let's say a quarter of all U.S. adults, aside from, 80-year-olds. A lot of caveats here. But a quarter of all U.S. adults claim that they are content creators. So this may be like people who make a living and have large audiences, and also people who spend some sort of concerted amount of time making internet content. Maybe that's just for their friends or a small closed community, or maybe that is public content with the goal of monetizing or becoming known for their content. So that's interesting. The second stat here is another 54% of those adults, 18 to 60, would quit their job if they could make a living as full-time content creators. So half of U.S. adults would rather be making internet content than doing whatever job they do. Okay. They also break it down by age ranges. And this is actually really fascinating to me. 49.6% of respondents. So let's just round it up to 50%. All right. Let's cut the shit. And let's just call it 50% so we can stop saying all those numbers. 50% of respondents from 18 to 29, so young adults, said they would quit their job to become full-time content creators. 52%, 51.9, I'm rounding up to 52. Get off my back. 52% of people ages 30 to 44. Okay, did I mess this up? And 60% of respondents between the age of 45 and 60. Oh no, what did I do? What did I do here? Did I fuck this up? 51% for people. For people ages 30. Okay, here's what it is. Here's what it is. Bear with me. 50% of 18 to 29-year-olds say they'll quit their job. 52% of ages 34 to 40 would quit their job, and 60% of 45 to 60 would quit their job. So I apologize for the confusion, but and then wait, I'm going to complete the curve. 32% of respondents over 60 said they would swap their current job for careers in content creation. So what I'm trying to say with this data, again, grain of salt, it's one survey from one marketing agency, but point here is younger adults would like to quit their job and become content creators. But middle-aged to upper middle-aged, more upper middle-aged adults want to quit their jobs and become influencers, content creators than young adults. And then when you cross over into the post-60 range, that number drops way down to 30-ish, 31%. So what I'm trying to draw a picture of here is that younger people seem good with their jobs, whatever their jobs are. Middle-aged people are like, I got to get the fuck out of this. I wish I could be a TikToker or a YouTuber. And older people, 60-year-olds, are like, nah, I'm good. This internet shit's not for me as much. Still, large chunks, large percentages of all those age brackets really want to be influencers and content creators. But I found it fascinating that middle-aged people like myself, to use a cliche that is probably problematic and shitty, but people having their midlife crises, like myself, really seem to want to bail out of whatever they're doing and do cool shit on the internet. And I just found that really interesting. And I have talked about this with friends, colleagues, family members, occasionally at speaking engagements or whatever, of like, I have long been fascinated by the world I grew up in, where when you aspire to be something great or exciting, in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, however old you are, you're like, I want to be a rock star. I want to be an NBA player. I want to be, an archaeologist, whatever, something that you aspire to. And your heroes are usually the 1% of the 1%, the Michael Jordans, the Paul McCartneys, the whatever, the Diana Rosses of the world. And you're like, I wish I could be like them. And the path to becoming Diana Ross was, I'm going to train myself in music. I'm going to take music lessons. I'm going to become the best piano player, singer, basketball dribbler the world has ever seen. And then somehow I need to get an audition or go to a college and be discovered by a gatekeeper, an agent, a talent scout, a Hollywood executive who is then going to see all the talent and work that I've done to become the best singer in the world, and then permit me to enter the industry that I wish I could be part of. And that was this sort of path to greatness that was motivating, but also almost impossible to do. And it, again, is a very cliche of like, I want to be a movie star, but I'm also going to go to college for business because I probably won't be a movie star. So I need to have the backup plan. And, for a century of media and sports and music and whatever else we want to talk about in the sort of monoculture of like, there's 3 radio stations and I wish I could be Elvis. When the internet shredded that and blew it out to space, we now have a culture where when I see when a person, especially kids, see a YouTuber or a TikToker and they do a silly dance on TikTok and they have 4 million views, it is correct for a kid to say, like, I could do that, because they can do that. And so they desperately want to do that, and they do that with varying degrees of success. And so it is, none of these data points are surprising to me, because we see, I think one of the things in the study was like a large percentage of US adults personally know a person in their lives, in their friends, family, colleagues, who make a living or a partial living from being content creators. So like, you literally know that your neighbor is making internet content and making money from it. So why can't I also do that? And the answer is, you can do that. You don't have to be the greatest editor, singer, dancer, performer, trick shot basketball dribbler to gain millions of views, likes, follows on a platform. You can. The piece that is missing from that discussion is that if everyone is doing it and everyone wants to do it, then everyone is there, and differentiating yourself and pushing through the unprecedented amount of noise on a given platform in the space, in the content space that you want to occupy, is nearly impossible. And even if you do it, you then need to build a business around it. And that is also incredibly hard and almost impossible to do, unless you are really good at marketing, licensing, merchandise, whatever, and you understand the dynamics of a platform and your relationship to an audience, so that you can say, hey, if you love this so much, maybe you should buy my, t-shirt or whatever, without poisoning your relationship to the audience. And even if you are good and brilliant at all those things, even if you do them all perfectly and well, and you are generating thousands and millions of views, likes, listens, whatever, and you're selling t-shirts and whatever, any of these platforms can flip a switch and turn off your algorithmic discovery at any time, or ban you at any time, or whatever, and your career, business, content ecosystem is out of luck. So it is a fascinating time for the culture, for this culture, for 50% of everyone, any two people you meet in your life on the street, at the coffee shop, one of them is like, I wish I could quit my job to make YouTube videos. I just find that fascinating and telling and representative of our cultural moment. Let me tell you, it's just very hard. I've worked for multiple media companies. I've consulted with big and small organizations that are trying to build a business, differentiate themselves, create interesting original content. I have made things on the internet that have gone very viral, that have reached multiple millions of people across many platforms. And it's a lot of fun. It's very exciting. It is very creatively satisfying. And would you like to know how much money I've made from those things? I'm going to say $0, because most of them cost money to make, or, required a lot of time and effort and complexity and whatever else. And as the ecosystems change and whatever, like, you can get millions of views on a thing, but that doesn't mean people are going to come back and attach themselves to your thing, your brand, your personality, your content, your vertical, getting people to subscribe, to attach, to become obsessed with whatever you're making is so hard. Because guess what? There's 40 billion other things I could watch after I scroll past that one thing that you did that was cool or funny. And even if you get them to stick, getting them to spend money, contribute money, buy something, or even watch an ad is then another layer abstracted from that loyalty connection. So it's so damn hard. And I have so much admiration and respect for my guests on this show because they are miraculous at figuring out how this works. Some of them have stumbled into it, and or some of them have been doing it for so goddamn long that they finally figured it out. They worked so hard. And on the flip side, the internet is just littered with geniuses, brilliantly talented people who deserve fame, recognition, and audience, who just don't know how to run a business. Because that's not what they do. And they don't have a friend or a colleague who can do it with them, for them. And there's not enough money in their life, in their day job, that they can make the leap. Not people who are working a full-time job, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, do not have the time or money to make the leap from, hey, I got 1,000 views on my Instagram. I think I got something here. But to turn that into a business will require 80 more hours a week of time, thought, investment, creativity. You're going to, even if you can afford to do that, you're going to burn out pretty quick. So it is a rare creature who can do all of those things, push through the hurdles of making that happen, and become successful on the other side. And these millions of Americans, this 50% of adults, and countless kids who are like, I want to be a YouTuber when I grow up. They're probably not thinking about these dimensions. And I just find that fascinating. I like to think about it. I like to talk about it. I have one more story for you. And I don't know. I don't know what we're going to make of this. Have you heard of AI? It stands for artificial intelligence. It's the thing when, when a human being thinks the thoughts, it is, it is regular intelligence. But when a toaster has thoughts, it's artificial. I don't know if I don't even love the term artificial intelligence or artificial whatever. I am semantically more interested in the term synthetic because, artificial implies, I don't know. Well, I don't like the term natural. I don't like the term. I don't like when people are like, this is natural, but this is not natural. So I only eat things or use products that are natural. And I'm like, well, the sun is natural. And it's a nuclear reactor in the sky that will kill you if you stay outside in front of it for too long. So if you only do natural things, then I would say don't go outside, because that natural sun is going to fuck you up. That's a silly way to poke holes in the natural, synthetic argument. But I guess my point is that artificial is such a weird word. It's real, a machine learning is a real thing, but it is synthesized by humans. It is synthesized by machines. So whatever you want to call it, I like the term synthetic media, where it's like, hey, this image was synthetically generated by an algorithm, but this image was painted by a human, or created by a human in Photoshop. I don't know. I'm being stupid and semantic. Point is, YouTubers, creators, Instagrammers, TikTokers, and the like are not so thrilled with all the recent AI stuff. A website called Proof News, which I was not familiar with, but is a nonprofit tech journalism site. I'm a big fan of nonprofit media, nonprofit journalism for obvious reasons. Proof News I was not aware of, but the Markup also does amazing work. One of my previous guests works there or freelances there. So Proof News, this also comes via TubeFilter. Did a story about all the usual suspects: Apple, Nvidia, a company called Anthropic, which I had never heard of either, but they're just they're another AI synthetic company. They have been training models on a data set that contains the subtitles from 173,000 YouTube videos. The subtitles, this is all data that's public on the internet. YouTube videos are public on the internet. I can scrape them and download them and read the title, the subtitles, the text of thousands of YouTube videos that are generated by YouTube's algorithms. And they have pulled all that stuff down and dropped it into a data set that is called, perhaps nefariously called, the pile. So literally a pile of data from YouTube captions, which was originally intended, or excuse me, it was created by a nonprofit called Eleuther AI. And the purpose of the pile was to provide smaller AI operations with low-cost training material. So, hey, if Microsoft and Google need things to train their algorithms on, well, they're going to pay big bucks to harvest and gather and whatever, I assume. But I think this was supposed to be, hey, if there's like a nonprofit or a governmental body that could utilize large language models to do something useful or important, or I don't know, cure a disease. I don't really know. I'm speculating, so don't take my word for it. But I think there were good intentions for this pile. However, these other huge tech companies, Apple, Nvidia, Anthropic, have somehow gotten their paws on the pile, and all the biggest YouTubers, your Mr. Beasts, your Jacksepticeye's, your Marquez Brownlees, and such, are justifiably upset because they did not authorize these companies to scrape their words. The words that they speak in their YouTube videos are now being sucked up and used to train AI models to then create profit for these massive tech companies. And they're calling it theft, which is justifiable. Anthropic responds to these allegations. They told Wired that YouTube's terms of service only, quote, cover direct use of its platform, which is distinct from the use of the pile dataset. So they're basically justifying it or rebutting it by saying, hey, we didn't scrape your YouTube videos. We just scraped this pile that someone else made from your YouTube videos. So that response does not address the core issue. Obviously, that's bullshit. Here is why I find this so philosophically vexing. Taking someone else's copyrighted work and using it, profiting from it in a way without the consent of its creators, sucks and is usually illegal. Full stop. And also, does this thing that is happening with AI technologies, does it suck and is it bad? Yes. I am saying, in my opinion, unequivocally yes. Is it philosophically what's the word? Not etymologically, like pedagogically, philosophically. This is like the study and structure of knowledge, right? If we break it down to its parts, is it philosophically different than what I'm literally doing right now on this podcast, which is taking someone else's reporting, taking someone else's journalism, taking someone else's complaints and discussions and discourse and summarizing it in a new form using my human mind to then create new content that I am theoretically profiting from. This is how art and content is made and has been created since the dawn of human civilization. Someone creates something based on their experiences, and then we, the audience, consume it and think, oh, what if this cave painting of a bison was with this cave painting of a tree, and then I made the bison tree cave painting. What if I heard this Mozart symphony and I made it a little like that, but I added I don't know, kazoos to what if I download this crazy viral YouTube video and remix it into this ridiculous song that I was inspired to make, and then that video goes crazy and it goes crazy viral, and now I'm making a new thing. We have legal structures in place to say, hey, when there is a piece, everything you make is copyrighted. But if I take a piece of copyrighted work and add value to it and commentate on it or remix it and create new work, that has value and is protected by copyright. Everything a human mind can perceive can then be turned into new things. But this feels, so I'll pause there and say, AI, large language models, these algorithms are literally doing that. They're doing precisely and exactly that. Why it feels bad and icky and why it is bad is because it's happening at an unprecedented scale. The OpenAIs and the Anthropics of the world are scraping bajillions of words and videos and audio and whatever of copyrighted work at this massive scale, and transmogrifying them into other things and or creating millions and billions of dollars of value for 6 tech companies. So instead of one artist or content creator using her human brain to say, like, what if I do this with this and I'm inspired by this and mashing all this stuff together, and now we have hip hop, a new kind of music that then becomes a cultural thing and empowers a generation, a class of artists or creators, right? Instead, tech companies are hoovering up all this data, doing exactly what humans have done for millennia, but funneling the value up to 7 tech bros. So is it bad? Yes, it fucking sucks. And it's problematic. And probably requires some sort of regulatory addressing. Is it different than what we've always done? I don't know that it is, except for the scale. And then what also kind of sucks, or is a weird mirror of, where we've been and where we've come, is that, hey, all these content creators who are complaining about it, Marquez, Mr. Beast, everyone, they're saying, hey, essentially they're saying, hey, you're using my content to make these tech companies rich. They're correct. And also, YouTube, Google is using your content to make YouTube rich. Yes, you are millionaires from becoming very popular on these platforms, but also you have been the conduit through which these platforms make billions of dollars. Both things are true. One cannot exist without the other. So, again, I'm sorry, I just keep belaboring the point, but I am of mixed mind about it. It is bad and will be destructive. I had this thought too of how, even though fair use, protected use is legally protected, it does damage industries and people and livelihoods. And the best example I could come up with was, as I was coming up in the media business, I was working for and in the ecosystem of sort of like blogs that were starting to become media companies. And the secret to their success was they would scour the internet for actual journalism about whatever the topic was. And they would look at it and say, oh, the New York Times is reporting that this happened. And then the bloggers would rewrite those stories. They would summarize those stories. And of course, the ethical ones would say, hey, this story comes to us from the New York Times. They would link back to the article. But 99.9% of users on the internet would read their favorite blogs because it had a point of view. It wasn't stodgy. It was a personality or a team that was a little more fun to read, or they had a hot take or whatever. And they would read a headline and they would read a paragraph on the blog and be like, cool. And then they'd click on 7 more other random things. And they would never buy a subscription to the New York Times or purchase a newspaper or even click back to the New York Times to read the primary source reporting that cost a lot of money to do because it was paying the salary of a seasoned journalist rather than a kid in their bedroom who was blogging about tech, right? So under protected use, these bloggers were summarizing and commentating on other people's work, as I am literally doing right now, to create value for their audiences, and their audiences began to eclipse the audiences of the primary source journalism. So my point is, blogging and internet sites fucking wrecked the journalism and book publishing industry. It decimated those industries, often to the detriment of human knowledge, because many of those bloggers, even if they were doing their damnedest, were not doing. They were not educated in the rigorous ethics of journalism the way a Washington Post reporter would be. So they were creating value and amassing audiences on the backs of the people doing it, and they destroyed that industry. And it continues to recover from that transformation. And all of that was done. I guess my point is, all of that was done within the correct an ethical legal framework of fair use copyright protections. Philosophically, this is identical. Philosophically, this data is public. And if I wanted to scrape 170,000 YouTube captions and put it in a spreadsheet and maybe figure out, hey, a lot of YouTubers talk about this, and maybe I can commentate on that and then make a podcast and then make money. I can do that, but we're doing that. The AI bots are doing that at an unprecedented scale. And it will decimate. The reason creators are upset is that it's going to fuck them up, because we're already seeing synthetic influencers. I've been talking about synthetic influencers for 5 years. I would go to conferences and get up on stage and be like, hey, check out this lady. She's got millions of followers. People hang on her every word. She does all this cool shit. She's a fashion icon. She's got merch. She goes to conferences. Oh, by the way, she's not real. She's CGI. She's made of ones and zeros. And AI is going to scrape all these people and all the language, and it's going to generate video, and it's going to generate human faces, and it's going to generate podcasts and videos and conversations and whatever. We've all seen it. It's already happening, but it's going to generate it at such a pace and at such a scale that many people on the internet are going to be clicking on random algorithmic bullshit that is suggested to them in their feeds, and they're going to be like, this guy's hilarious. I love this show. And they're not even going to know that it was generated by algorithms. And every time they watch a robot telling them about hot new sneakers, that's one less click, one less view, one less Patreon subscriber for a cool dude who is running a sneaker podcast or whatever the fuck. So this will decimate industries, and it requires a legal regulatory framework. But is it philosophically wrong? Not right now, not in our current framework. It just blows my mind. It's very troubling to say out loud, this is fine and correct, but also fucked up. Have you been watching the Olympics? We are. I don't particularly care about it. I find all culture, but sports in particular, to be so arbitrary. And you could say this about anything, but it's like, we have all agreed that throwing a ball that is this size into a hoop that is this size is interesting. And therefore, the people who do that the best in the world make millions of dollars. But we could just as easily have said, the ball should be this size and you have to throw it behind your head upside down, and that's the sport called basketball. Like, it is arbitrary. There is no question that these are people with extraordinary athletic abilities. They are the best in the world. But the balance beams and the bars and the bicycles that we assign to them as being the sports are just culturally relative to whatever. So I find that very interesting, and I find it hard to care about how many basketballs go into a hoop. But I like other media. I'm more of an arts guy. I care about art. I don't care about competition or sports. But But as a video game enthusiast, I like the idea of esports, where it's like, oh, I love this. I think this game is interesting. So I would like to see the best players in the world play it. I think chess is an extraordinary game. It's cool to watch the best chess players in the world play chess because, wow, they're geniuses. How could I know how to play chess, but I could never play chess at this level. It's extraordinary to watch. So why am I saying this? Because as we're watching the Olympics, we are watching television commercials, which we never see. And my kids never see. They do not watch television. They see YouTube ads, as we said earlier. But TV commercials are fucking wild. And I am noticing that in between the car commercials and all the pharmaceutical ads for osteoporosis and depression, every other ad is for AI bullshit. Every ad is for Copilot and Gemini, which is Google's thing. Salesforce has some shit that's like Einstein or whatever. And almost all the ads are like, hey, open up your phone and just let Gemini write your email for you. Isn't that great? And I'm like, yeah, that can be useful, but there's just a framework around it, a marketing sludge around it it feels very like, hey, we're all doing this. Everyone's doing it. And it's all here. It's all here and it's ready. And it's the best thing that's ever happened. And it's not there yet. And also, even when it is there, we have a lot of shit to work out with it. From a privacy, from a regulatory, from a copyright, from an ethics point of view. We have a lot of shit to work out with AI before we can all say, hey man, you're enjoying those Olympics? Well, let's do this Copilot thing and then your life will be so great. We have to solve some stuff first. And we need leaders in Congress and the EU. Hey man, anyone listening from Europe, shout out. Shout out to Europe for having laws. Privacy, regulation. Y'all are doing stuff that is forcing these global companies to get their shit together and forcing and compelling other companies, other governments, the US, to follow suit. Because they're like, well, Facebook's in the EU and it's also in the US, but they got to make their website compliant with GDPR. So it's got to be compliant for everyone. And it forces companies to follow the rules even when they don't want to in the US. And so, hey man, shout out to Europe. Thanks for the laws. And we'll see. We'll see if these child protection bills make some headway. I hope they do, for all our sake. For now, I hope you enjoyed some of these hot, steaming, smoking hot takes on these stories. I found them interesting. Again, there's so much of this territory to cover. And I really just kind of comb through a lot of it and say, like, you know what? I can't speak to this because I'm not an expert. I don't really have an interesting take on this or that. But hey, this story, this development, these are the things I find interesting. I hope you find it interesting. I assume you would not be here listening or watching if you did not. So thank you for subscribing. If you are have found yourself new to this channel or this feed, hit the like button, subscribe on your favorite podcast app if there is a place to leave a review. And you don't mind taking a moment or two to just say, hey, this is why the show is valuable to me. It really does help when other people discover the show. They're like, oh, there's people here. There's an audience here. I know you're there. I know you're listening. And sometimes podcast audiences can be a little invisible. They're harder to spot sometimes. So I appreciate your support over all these years, and I hope you're enjoying the program. All the links are in the description. They're in the YouTube video. Join our Discord community. Check out the Patreon. Send me an email. Leave a voicemail. And like I said, some pretty outstanding guests who are on the docket and sending out an SOS. And by SOS, I mean emails to really cool people who I hope to hear back from very soon. So if there's a guest that you are desperate to hear on this very program, let me know. I will reach out. I have my ways of getting into the inboxes, sliding into the DMs of internet famous people, if you will. Can't reveal the trade secrets, but just know I'm going to get in, though. I'm going to get in those DMs, whether you like it or not, and get those people on the program. Thank you for listening. Thanks for sticking with me, and I'll talk at you in 1 week's time.